Welcome to Houston Newsmakers Extra. I'm talking with Congressman Al Green. We were talking about SB 7 and some of the reasons why the Texas history of voting is just checkered as it relates to discrimination against blacks. The history is fascinating. You talked about so many things that happened right here in Harris County and Fort Bend County that were specific to keeping people from voting, which is probably why we should probably lean toward the other way.
Well, as I indicated, in Harris County we had white primaries. Smith versus Allwright is the lawsuit, landmark case that went before the Supreme Court that eliminated white primaries. What is a white primary? No blacks allowed to participate in the Democratic Party, by the way. It was the Democratic Party's white primary. By the way, only a liberated Democrat can tell you these things. Yeah. And I'm a liberated Democrat. And then after the court ruled that you can't have these white primaries, Fort Bend County had to be told that you can't have a white pre-primary. There was a man named John Adams. He was the person who had to file the lawsuit to change that. So with these things happening, you have to understand that we've been in a situation where racism against black people has been evident for a long time. Remember now, Gordon Granger took a general to come to Texas and tell us that the slaves were free. A general.
Republicans will say, and many folks who are who watch the conversation going on and across the country who are putting these kinds of bills into place will say this is about voter integrity. We have to make sure that voters know that there is no fraud. Now they say this without really much in the way of widespread fraud being demonstrated. It seems to me. Are you aware of anywhere in the country where there has been any instances where there's been any widespread fraud demonstrated?
Not only am I not aware, but the courts are not aware. When these things have been litigated, we've not found any circumstances where we have widespread fraud that has actually had an impact on an election. And these are Republican judges. You've had Republican election officials. None of them have brought this type of issue to the attention of the public, saving those persons who conclude that the insurrection was not an insurrection, persons who've concluded that the president still should hold office and that the president won the election. These are people who operate in a different universe.
Well, in a different universe, but we have seen recent polls, I'm sure you've read them as well, where they talk about a big portion of the Republican Party, when they've polled Republican Party members, believe that the election was a fraud. How do you have a relationship in what we think should be a two-party system when one party believes that there was fraud where there really has no been demonstrated fraud?
I believe some of the people believe this, but I also know that I think Ray Charles made a song popular. There is no one so blind as he who won't see. Not he who can't see, but he who won't see. There are some people, a good many, who just don't want to see that truth because that truth does not fit into the universe that they live in, wherein they can claim that Trump won. Believe me, these members of Congress are very bright people. We should not assume that they don't understand what the facts are. I believe they do.
They are following, from what I've read, the base, which many of them believe that the former president was wrongly removed. The quote big lie that's out there. How do you unwind that? It seems to me that that's a real challenge going forward. And you as a member of Congress, you're dealing with that every day. You have people in Congress who are out there, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and other people who are out there who really are on the far edge of what you can consider radicalism.
Well, if people choose not to see, you can't force them to see what they just decide, I'm not going to see that truth. And anything that has plausibility is something that you can push because you have access to a news media that is open to allowing that which is plausible to be presented as that which is, which makes no sense, but that's the universe we're in now.
Right.
So what we have to do is understand that when we have the opportunity to make this significant positive change that people of goodwill would make, we have to do it. If we don't do it, we will only allow the opportunity to pass us by. And when other persons get power, you notice that they use it. Power is fleeting. You're not going to have it forever. And while we have it, we need to do these good things. George Floyd Justice in Policing ought to be passed. John Lewis Voting Rights Act ought to be passed. H.R. 1 for the People Act ought to be passed. These are some of the things that we can do and should.
And you're willing to say, hey, if it means getting rid of the filibuster to get these things done, so be it. We got the power, let's make it happen.
Regrettably, with a lot of despair, I would say yes, only because I've seen how my Republican colleagues operate. When they get the power again, these protocols may become meaningless in terms of they're trying to maintain power, and it is a power grab. So they're going to do what they can to maintain power, and they'll eviscerate it. Let me just correct one thing that I said. I said the man's name was John Adams. It was Terry. John Terry was his name.
Okay, the one at
Fort Bend. Yeah, right. John Terry.
So before we go, what is hot on your plate right now? What are you right now in this area that you're back home now, your constituents are telling you, what is it you're pushing for more than anything else? Right?
Well, I have to push to get my bill that would streamline this process of getting disaster funds to constituents, because we suffer from these 100-year floods every other year thereabout. So we have to streamline that process. So I want to see that bill pass if I can get it through, and I believe we can.
And what would be the resistance to something like that? I mean, surely everyone would think that if, for example, if my congressional district that I'm representing gets into the situation, I'm going to want to have some sort of speedy relief.
Well, we had bipartisan support last time. It has bipartisan support at the committee level now. So we'll see. But until it's done, we can't say that it absolutely will be. My hope is that it will be. But then there's another piece of legislation that I hold in high esteem. It's actually a resolution. We have not reconciled in this country. If you saw what happened to the Asian lady in New York, how she was just brutally pushed aside. And then there were two circumstances. In one, a man was trying to kick her in the face. They're killed. I went to Georgia after those persons lost their lives in Georgia at those spas. I went there. We have to reconcile. We need a Department of Reconciliation. The things that we are serious about that are going to take a long time to resolve and may never get resolved. For example, we have a Department of Labor. We're serious about labor issues, so we have a labor secretary. We're serious about defending this country. We have a Department of Defense with a Secretary of Defense. If we are serious about reconciliation and dealing with all of these problems that we have that emanate from invidious discrimination, we need a department to do it with a Secretary of Reconciliation. I've asked the President to do this. A commission is fine, but we really need a commitment. A Department of Reconciliation is a commitment. So I will continue to push this. I don't know where it will go, but I know what the future demands of us. And if we don't do this, we will find ourselves living and reliving these circumstances over and over again. It's time for us to reconcile.
Congressman Al Green, 9th Congressional District representing, and never takes a day off. Well, maybe you take a day off from time to time. Rarely takes a day off. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. Hey, Houston Newsmakers, share this with everybody you know.